Okay, here to wrap up the first hour of the weekend edition of the Cortland Economics Report. I'm Al Cortland. Appreciate you joining me. Duncan Cameron is joining Marshall Berol and myself right now. You all know who Marshall Berol is. Duncan is a very, very interesting guy, involved certainly in the precious metals industry. He lives in Australia, if I'm not mistaken, New Zealand. Well, you know, they're both one and the same to us ignorant Northwestern Americans, for lack of better terms.
We arrived above, they arrived below the galleys. That's what we joke.
There you go. And, you know, that's probably very true, huh, Marsh? Having said that, Duncan, you're new on the show. You and I have spent a fair amount of time chatting off the air. Tell our listeners, if you would, a little bit about yourself. Take a couple of minutes and a little bit about your company.
Right, okay. Look, Anglo Far-East is an international bullion custodian. We've been around for 20 years. We actually call ourselves the original bullion custodian. We made an award-winning movie in 1998 foretelling the crash in 2008, and on it we featured Ron Paul and various other well-known people. And you're welcome to go onto our site and download and actually look at that movie. And so we simply said that it's not enough to be buying gold and silver. You need to think about where are you going to position it. Most people think that buying it is the smart move, and they buy equities and they buy gold bars and silver coins, but they've not really thought through the process of what happens later on down the line when governments turn very nasty towards their people. And I think the best example of that is when Charlie Munger made bad reference to uncivilized for gold people. But Charlie Munger was born in 1924, and that was the year that Lenin died and Stalin came into power. That was the year that Hitler went to prison to write Mein Kampf. That was the year the Greeks went into a basket case, and Benedetto was elected to the fascist right. And yet 14 years out from that, would you have called anyone uncivilized to have been buying gold and silver? So we're not saying that don't own gold coins and bars, but you need to think about owning precious metals outside your own country. You need to have access to it. So we have a company based in Panama, but vaulting in Switzerland, and you can get your money out at any time. In cash. You could even come and pick up your bars if you want. Serial numbered, allocated, and using an international third-party company called Grant Thornton. We also have a trust company crawling over it, so we're pretty obsessed about third-party transparency and the fact that the foxes are not guarding the hen house. But really, it's people need to think about what's going to happen in the next 10 years, not now as to whether it's uncivilized or not.
No question about that, Marshall. We are in a free market system. I want you to tell, if you would, our listeners a little bit about Encompass Fund. You don't need to spend quite as much time as Duncan did, simply because you've been on the show a bazillion times and everybody knows about it. Your banner is on our website. Real quick, Encompass Fund.
Thank you, Al. Encompass Fund is a no-load mutual fund. The ticker symbol is ENCPX, Edward Nancy Charles Paul X-ray, that can invest in any size company, any industry. Having said that, during the close to 6.5 years of its existence, the Encompass Fund has been primarily invested in resource companies, the precious metals, gold and silver, the industrial metals such as copper, and various aspects of the energy industry. And we're invested primarily in the smaller companies because we're looking for long-term capital growth. And we've had some excellent success, and other periods of time, because of the volatility of the markets, the success has not been as good as other times.
Well, markets are very volatile. Having said that, gentlemen, Duncan and Marshall, we have an election coming up. I think it's a very important election. I think it's one of the most important elections, presidential elections, of my lifetime. I don't necessarily want to talk about the election per se, but I want to talk about the implications and the actions that you're recommending people take over the next few years. Duncan, you want to start?
Well, I think the biggest thing people need to be looking at is the fact that currency is being debased. And so it doesn't matter which president is elected in the USA. The reality is that money printing seems to be the only way out, because you either ask your voters to live within their means or to be taxed more, and that just doesn't seem to get anybody voted. So we'll watch America print money, we'll watch Japan print money, we'll watch the Brits print money and the Euro print money, and at the end of the day, your currency, your savings are just going to get debased. So we advocate you buy silver, you buy gold, because that is your protection against the debasement of currency, and that momentum is going to pick up pace at an ever more increasing. So it doesn't matter which president gets in, they're all playing off the same playbook.
What do you think about that, Marshall? They're all playing off the same playbook. I have a tendency to kind of agree, although I have decided, and I went on record last weekend on the show as saying I'm going to vote for Mitt Romney. I'd love to write in Ron Paul. I do not want to see the Democrats retain power, though, in our government. What do you think about all of that?
Well, I think certainly each person decides for themselves who they think will be the best person to be president, and it's either going to be Romney or Obama. Other candidates just are not going to make it, whether they deserve to or not. We think that, yes, there is a continued devaluing, debasing of the currencies, paper money, whether that's the dollar, the euro, the yen, the pound, or any of the others, and that's going to work for the benefit of gold and silver, the bullion, and also the stocks that are exploring for and producing gold and silver. The Encompass Fund is a stock investor. We don't do futures, we don't do bullion, and we think that the stocks offer a good avenue to be to benefit from the continuing rise of gold and silver prices that we see coming, and that's going to be regardless of who's elected president. There'll be differences differences based upon who's elected and which party or parties control the houses of Congress in the United States. But the fact of the matter is there's going to be continued demand for gold and silver, and whether you do it in the form of bars or coins or the stocks involved in those, we think it's going to be beneficial.
You know, at the risk of agreeing with everybody, I have to say one thing, though, and that is I'm a real believer in diversification, and as you know, Marshall, Kathy and I have put our money where our collective mouths are. We are 25% real estate, we are 25% the conventional stock market, and we're 50% hard assets. And within the area of hard assets, I think people need to also diversify to an extent. I think you need to have the commodity itself in a safe place. And you know, in the case of Big Al and Kathy, you know, we buy silver rounds purely and simply, and we take possession of them. We also have probably a greater portion of our allocation of funds in the hard asset sector in stocks and bonds, simply because I believe in the leverage that's available in the shares. Having said that, I got to tell you, I think people need to diversify. I think they need to have all aspects of that particular segment of the market. What do you guys think about that, Duncan?
Well, I'm a very keen mining enthusiast. I've got about 80 mining stocks, and 70 of them are on the TSX, so you're sort of singing to the choir. In fact, I have to thank you, Al, because I bought Pediment as my first ever share of Timmins on the worst day in 2008. And
you did very well.
And Pediment got taken out by
Timmins.
Argonaut, and there's been a pile of other companies. But I've also watched how it's been knocked around, and you've got to have a pretty stiff constitution to be in the mining shares. So if you're an older person trying to set aside a store of wealth and you want to know, we're seeing a lot of our clients really turning towards gold. They're not taking focus off silver, but there's a lot of fear in the market about another crash coming. And so people have to be aware that owning gold and silver coins, bars, having a store of wealth outside your country, though, and the mining shares, it's just a balanced view.
Mr. Berol.
Well, I would certainly concur, and when Big Al says be diversified, that's certainly very, very good advice. Diversified as to how you hold your assets, possibly where you hold them, depending on liquidity and efficiency and economics. And also, we are at the Silver Summit, and silver doesn't get as much attention as gold, generally speaking, but silver is an extremely attractive commodity currently, and particularly because on historical basis it's undervalued compared to gold. Silver is more volatile than gold, the bullion itself and the companies, and then silver companies to invest in them, and there's a far fewer number than there is gold. But silver is very attractive because it is an investment, a storehouse of value, and also about half the production of silver goes into products. There's Apple made a big announcement this week, the iPad Mini and the rest of the Apple products, and so many electronic products have silver in them, and that usage is increasing. silver is being increasingly used in medical purposes and for other consumer and industrial purposes, and people should look more closely at silver, whether it's the bullion or the stocks, than they tend to do.
Okay, there you have it. Two very, very valuable opinions in Big Al's opinion. There you go. If you want to find out more information about Australasia and what Duncan does, their banner is now on our website. Check it out, get all the information you want, and then make up your own minds about any potential actions you might take. The Encompass Fund, which, in the interest of full disclosure, I have to tell you, Big Al is an investor in, has been on our website for quite some time and will remain there. Stick around. We'll be right back with the second hour of the weekend edition of the Cortland Economics Report.